I run across so many new things, but yeah, I remember that guy did a big version in a cage or something, or in a, yeah, it was like a much larger version of the Ortour.
Now you're making it up as you go, Doug.
Yeah, we bought
No.
there is a larger version.
Yeah,
No,
this
well,
was a
he
3D
made,
print. I mean, I'll see it. I've already. There are two things I can drop in the chat box already. Sorry, Doug. I didn't mean to speak over you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, this one guy made a quite large one. I believe he used most of the Ortour parts, but he basically needed a custom size, so he like kind of extended everything.
Right. But this was also where there's some 3D print additions to it, like for guiding air and oh no, you sent it to me because of the Z that he had control over. It was the one where you said, except for the handle, you thought you had found it as this Thingiverse project. Is it ringing?
Yeah, that was just recently.
That was very recently.
That was a Z-axis for the Ortour.
Yeah.
And he did a nice job. You know, the one that he shows in the video, the gearing looks slightly different. He uses a bigger wheel to turn it, and the wheel is in the middle of. So what this guy did was he basically printed a plate with the holes to mount on the Ortour, and it has a slot in it. And then he printed a piece that would go on the laser itself, and that's anti-slotted, you know, so it kind of slips in, kind of like a, you know, like a ball and socket almost, but and then he put some gearing on it so that you could bring it up and down, and then some sort of feature where he can push the gear and lock it in place, so he can turn it to where he wants to, and then push the gear and it locks it and holds it in place. Just look really nice for being able to adjust, you know, a decent amount of swing on that thing.
Tim, Mark arrived, so the most important person is here. Just wanted you to know because I saw him sneak in the side door.
Yeah, we have Paul in Dallas as well.
Okay, so I dropped a link into the chat, which is that Ortour build from Thingiverse. And I'm now going to put in the cut and the print and cut video from Oz that shows how to do the indexing with a laser that has a pass-through slot, which Mark's laser does not have. What, no comments, Mark? Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's still here.
So I've been
I'm just ignoring you.
I see. Good plan. Good plan.
So I've been thinking, I haven't done it yet, and I've been thinking I want to do this. I went to get wood, 3mm plywood from Home Depot, but they don't sell it anymore.
Oh, really?
Because when I got it like 6 months ago or something, it was a nice piece of wood. It was inexpensive and cut down to 12 by 7 or 12 by 9. It worked great in my laser cutter, my K40. But anyways, the guy that was there was gracious enough to go ahead and cut it into these squares.
Oh, nice.
Normally you got to pay $1 a cut or whatever, you know. And so, you know, as I'm thinking about this, with a slot in the front of my K40 and an extension on the laser head to move the lens down, you know, you could basically slip in a piece of wood, cut it off, pull it out, slip another piece in. So all I'd have to do is take it and cut it into 4 foot by 1 foot sections and just cut to size. That got me thinking about, you know, can I put a slot in the back and do the feed through?
What would you do without challenges in your life, Doug? What would you do?
Oh, no. I wouldn't make something, use it once and go, that's cool.
Right. No, you wouldn't.
That's interesting. Well, we picked up Dan as well. And I guess we've gone about 10 minutes into our starting time. So
That's all Doug's fault.
no worries. And we'll I was going to just go over an idea for a fruit bowl, and then also I think Travis is going to show us a little bit of an interesting machine.
Remind me to never share an idea with you again, Tim, okay?
And but before we jump into it, is there any questions anybody's come up with? Any challenges you've had dealing with Fusion 360? It's been like a month or so since we last spoke.
Well, at my age, I forgot everything I learned.
You know, Howard, there's a version of that in my life, which is I learn it and I don't practice it enough, often enough, soon enough after learning it for it to stick.
Yeah,
You know?
when you learn something really complicated, but you don't use it for another year, you're gonna
Exactly.
think, well, how in the hell did I do that?
Exactly.
Back to square one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mentioned
I've got
to
a
you-
question.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go first.
Okay, I was just going to mention that I was working on something, had a problem doing something. Tim went ahead and I sent it to Tim. Tim said, "Oh, I think I got this," and he went ahead and sent it back, and I couldn't read it. I couldn't open his file, and it said I needed a newer version. And I looked at the version that I had, and it was like 6.2.18. And I looked at what the newest version was, and it was like 6.2.20. And I'm going, so be aware, Fusion, these weren't like major point releases. This was like 6.2.18 or 19 versus 6.2.21, and I could not open the file. They're not backwards compatible. So I don't know.
That's crazy. I guess you got to take the auto updates when they come. They're generally a bit of a pain when they happen, but
Yeah, I generally don't update stuff unless there are problems or a feature that has to comes across. I don't like just blindly taking updates. So, but I don't run Windows, so I'm not trained into that. Just take it. Thank you, sir. Can I have another?
I bet the last Windows you have, the most modern Windows you have, Doug, is probably Windows 95. Is that right?
No, I think I had Windows 7.
Oh, okay, go.
And I ran it in it came on a laptop that I bought, and then I threw it into a virtual machine, and
Box it in.
it boxed it in. Yeah.
I'm still running Windows 7 on one of my machines, but I won't get into that. I haven't actually turned that machine on in months.
It's my understanding that Windows 10 is the last version of Windows, and then they're going to eventually go to a pay per, like everybody else is doing. So if you're using Windows, you're going to be paying on a monthly basis
Subscription.
somewhere down the road.
Great.
Hey, Dan,
They've already done that, Howard. At work, we have to pay for every upgrade we get now. And they only give you 2 years, and then they stop supporting it.
Yep. I
You
know.
know, oh, I'm sorry, you got to upgrade. It will cost you $53,000 for those PCs.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if the screens are smaller than 10 inches, Windows remains free. So I'm going to have 9-inch screens from now till doomsday.
Tim, is there a way to mute him? He's kind of bugging me.
It's funny. I changed that voice to Homer when I hear it. Even it's automatically.
So something in a bowl, you're going to do something like that, Tim?
Yeah, actually, before I go there, though, I think Dan, were you about to say something?
Yeah, right.
My question is a fundamental one. I have not been able to figure out how to make a duplicate part. And I looked through a bunch of your videos, and everything you make is unique and new. But I tried to make a copy and a move, and I couldn't get two identical parts on the screen.
Oh, well, I'll have a look at that. We'll have a look at that maybe in a bit.
That's fine.
Yep. And let me make a note in case we don't get it to it today. I definitely want to follow up on it. Usually, if it's within an assembly, you can do a move and then click the copy button.
Yeah, I tried move copy and I couldn't get it to function that way for me.
Okay. Well,
So I'll be interested to see it done.
okay.
I think it
And I
was-
can live without it. I just wanted to know.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Okay, let me share my screen here, and I'm going to share. Why does it show me that? Oh, come on. Are you seeing a,
Tim, that's what we're seeing.
you're just seeing me, dang.
All I see is a labradoodle with glasses.
Now, for some reason,
Somebody had to say it.
and I like it. Okay, what's happening here with share screen? Why is it? Oh, there we go. Try this again. Done this before, but suddenly it needed to see security settings. Okay, so I was looking, I've been playing with the CNC router in the shop there, and I was looking for some new ideas for projects. And I stumbled over this video, and I just want to show one item that this guy made or showed.
Project number 9 is a fruit bowl. This is kind of a cool project.
That's a different kind of bowl.
Yeah, so the idea is it's a fruit bowl, it's a CNC project, and it allows a lot of area. And so when you put fruit in, you're not, you're not promoting, you're getting good airflow to keep your fruit from getting.
And it looks like they would fit with, each of the layers would fit within the layer below it, so you have good efficiency of wood.
Exactly. So the idea is you make it all out of one piece of wood. So scrap that. We don't care about the cell phone speaker. But let's go back to Fusion 360. So here's my version of it. But of course, I made it parametric because I figured, you want to be able to play around with it and do whatever. And I'll share this. I'll include a link with the meeting video in the forum when I do it, so that you can go in and grab it yourself.
Tim,
yep.
Did you start recording? You did, right?
Yes, I did. Thanks.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder. I sometimes forget. So I'll go back kind of to the beginning and show what I did. So the first thing I did, of course, was set up a bunch of parameters. Now, some of the parameters I didn't figure out at the beginning. Some of them you kind of figure out as you go. But I built it to give me a little bit of flexibility. So if you see, I had obviously a material thickness, cutter width. This is like the diameter of the end mill. Shear width, that's what I'm calling the width of each ring if you look at it from the top. Obviously the vertical height of each ring is the material thickness. The base width, I started out kind of backwards now that I think about it. And that is, I started with a given base dimension and then built the outer rings. Because I built this in a lot of the design I do, I think more sort of additive rather than, I wasn't really thinking machining properly at the time. So the way to do it, of course, would be to start with the size of whatever wood you have as the larger and go smaller.
Yeah.
But either way, you can make it work. Finish radius. This is just the little rounds on the edges of each ring or tier. The outside cut offset, that's basically the amount by which you step the cutter out for the next cut. So it's a combination of the cutter width plus the tier width. I did a base width and a base depth because I wanted to see if it would be cool. I wanted to play with it. Hey, does it have to be a square? Could it be a rectangle? What does it look like? And the same thing with the twist angle. I said, well, 45 is pretty regular, but what if we want to be a little irregular? See what it looks like. And then the first fillet radius is basically the radius right here, if you can see my mouse, on the corner of the solid base. And each successive radius gets larger and larger as the cutter goes around and each tier makes it larger. So those are the parameters.
Just out of curiosity, I'm trying to figure out if in the design that you've created, and this question comes from the fact that you have an increasing radius as you go outward, do you have a constant kerf? Is that like a default? The gap between the cut pieces in each of those is the same size gap?
That's correct. I have a constant kerf, and that kerf I'm calling, I think in this implementation, because I tried a couple of different ideas, I called it cutter width. It's basically the diameter of the end mill.
Okay, so you're staying within the same track. When you're cutting the outside of one, you're cutting the inside of the next.
That is correct.
It's not in two passes, it's just the one pass.
It's a single pass, effectively.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, did you put tabs in it, or did you?
I did put tabs in my when I did it on VCarve.
Oh, okay.
But I played around and I tried to figure out if it made sense to try and do something in Fusion 360 that I would export and import into VCarve.
Yeah.
But it didn't really make sense. Now, there may be something in the manufacturing workspace, but I haven't learned the manufacturing workspace very well yet. I think there's a few others that may have, and be happy to have someone take another crack at it. We did a session on it when I was away in May. I should go back and look at that video again and dig into it, because it would be kind of cool. In this case, making it in VCarve's super simple.
So you're using Fusion for design and iterating on different variations of parametric values and seeing what you like, etc. And then you're just taking the facts of how you've defined a bowl you like, and you're going and redesigning a flat board to be cut out using VCarve from what you learned in Fusion 360. Is that correct?
Precisely. So I'm using Fusion 360 as a design sandbox and a visualization tool. Because I'm not going to get this 3D visualization, obviously, in VCarve, right?
You know, Tim, what we might do, I can't remember the name of the guy who came in and told us about how to use Fusion 360 for making guitars and then outputting it to VCarve. But maybe we could just ask him on the side if he'd come in and show us that workflow. Then we give him your file, and we say, we'd like to go from this to something that could be just brought into VCarve.
Right. Well, you know, I tried a couple different versions of this bowl to try and do it kind of like that.
Yeah.
So I did a version in which I started with a block of wood, and I sketched my paths, which would be my profile center lines, and then did a profile which was rectangular for the cutter, and did a sweep. And I was able to cut it that way. The problem was that in creating the geometry, when you when you do an offset, Fusion 360 keeps that offset. Actually, let me think about this. If I did it, I was trying something different. I was trying to go with a constant radius instead of this nested radius. And that caused me trouble. I might be able to do it that way now that I think about it. Yeah, it probably would. I'm going to play with it a little bit, and if it works, I'll put that model in as well.
Okay.
But the only thing you'd really output that would be of use would be a flat pattern with those paths.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'd take me like 3 minutes to do that in VCarve.
I know, but you have to own the $700 package called VCarve.
Why can't you just output that as an STL file?
You can,
Right, 'cause-
if you output this as an STL file, that works great for a 3D printer, but for
No. So I thought I told you guys, I created a model in Fusion, which was a plaque, exported the plaque as an STL file, and then sliced that using Kiramoto for the CNC, and then cut it in the CNC.
right. So if I did it before I stack these up,
Yeah, you would put it. Yeah, basically
Right,
you'd put
right.
them back to two-dimensional.
Right.
yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, that's true. That's a good one. Now, one of the things I changed as well, if you may or may not have caught this in the video, and here I'm showing these as fillets. So it's a nice rounded ring, rounded cross section, and rounded edges in the cross section. But then what I did to simplify it in VCarve is I did these as chamfers so that I could use a V-bit. And I only did it on the top because, hey, you don't see the bottom really anyways.
Right.
And it gives you more surface for attachment.
And did you use, I mean, in your mind's eye, do you use dowels for assembly, or how do you get it to do, is it just straight glue?
Well, that's a good question. I toyed with that idea. Like, it would be a little, if you're on the 45s, it'd be fairly easy to figure out where to put the dowels, and you could run dowels in there.
Especially if they're in your CNC file, right?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, especially if we do what was suggested earlier. I don't have I wasn't looking at people's pictures, so I missed who was actually
I think it was Doug.
Doug. Yeah.
So yeah,
So-
you could put the holes in the top on the corners that were going to get it, and
Yeah.
then flip and then do the whole thing, and then flip it over,
Yeah.
and put the holes in the bottoms that were associated, and then bang, now you're just putting little dowel pins in. And
Yeah, and I thought too, you could, we have waste space in the corner here, so you could put alignment holes here.
Yeah.
Do a top side without cutting through, and then flip it over, do the other side and cut through and drill the holes,
the dowel pins.
the dowel pins, and the dowel pins could be completely buried, completely hidden.
Yeah, and perfectly aligned. Yeah.
In fact, I saw some a YouTube video of some guy doing really wonky, effectively dovetail joints, and in that case, you could actually put the pins you could machine the pins into the wood, but it would be a little bit silly.
Hey, Tim, I don't know why my mind's eye goes here, and please tell me if this is just preposterous, but I go back to when you were telling us about assemblies and how really all that this needs to do, and that's in quote marks, by the way, all this needs to do, is to be flat and aligned for you to be back to the flat board configuration that you'd need to be able to have a cut file exported as something to import to VCarve. I guess what I'm wondering is, could each of these pieces be rotated down back into position, and then you'd have the board with its cuts, and you'd be able to output that perhaps, even if it's just in a vector file like an SVG, you wouldn't get your roundovers and such. Yeah, that sort of a thing.
Yeah. This is kind of one approach in that direction. And then I might have, let me see, did I do that? Yeah, see, all the moves are at the end. So here's one where I did effectively that. So,
Yeah, right.
so if you look at this one, this approach was, here was my, oops, that was a sketch, and the sketches are turned off. Turn sketches on, I guess. There's only one sketch showing so far. And then there's the sketch of the paths. And this one is constant radius instead of the growing radius in the corners.
Yeah, right.
And then this is the cross sections, which is basically the end cutter cut profile. Then make the first cut, make the second cut, make the third cut, make the fourth cut, make the fifth cut. Actually, can't see them because the sketch is on. Make the last cut. And then I went in with the V-bit and made the chamfers.
Okay.
And then I, one at a time, lifted these guys.
That's sweet.
And then I grabbed alternate ones and rotated them.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, very nice.
Right? Now, the funny thing was, I did, the one I showed you first is the first one I made. And I thought, well, wait, that wasn't what they had. They had constant radiuses. So I went back and did this. And then I realized later, no, they actually did what I did the first time. The
Which
problem I have...
Or growing radiuses. Growing radiuses, right?
Yeah,
Which is
the
what you did?
growing radiuses work better than this does because it's a straightforward offset and the parametric linkage remains. I tried it here where I grew squares and then I radiused them in the paths. But when you make the radius, then the square loses the sides lose their parametric linkage. So when you change sizes, it doesn't work.
Oh, and if you do have the linkage, then the radiuses grow.
Right.
Okay.
So the other way I did it was I made them all as squares, and then I manually went in and added radiuses after the fact as fillets. And again, that's not really helping from a machining point of view.
Yeah, and honestly, your other one with the growing radiuses looks more bowl-like in the end. This looks like stacked squares.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a better look. So let's go back to this guy here. Looks better in cherry too, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's very suspicious when you have the knots in the same place on every one of those squares.
Yeah, the pine doesn't really work out. Not going to be a very strong bowl either with those knots in them. Which I have a question for the better woodworkers in the group. So I'm assuming that the grain is going to be terrible on one side of these. If I were making this, would I take 2 half-thick pieces of wood and laminate them together with the grains crossed over?
Looking in the direction of Dallas's image out there. Try to gain eye attention with him.
Dallas. But you're muted, Dallas.
Better yet, you just get four layers and make plywood, essentially, right?
Yeah, that is essentially what it is, but I don't like the look of plywood in this case. But it would probably work well.
It probably wouldn't look too bad. I mean, if you're talking about solid cherry or something, I mean, where you've got your layers just rotated.
Yeah.
I was immediately thinking about the issue of the grain as you talked about that, and I think it'd be wise to do a few layers there. It's always better to do an odd number than an even number, one in the center, one on either side. So it's 3 layers or 5 layers.
Okay, that's interesting.
Just out of curiosity, if we took a piece of wood and we sliced it down into 1/8-inch thicknesses and then glued it back up so that we did make plywood, but it would be all out of cherry or whatever wood we're using, would that work?
Sure would, but you know, the thing I was actually thinking about was doing, making cutting first like a pie-shaped piece that had grain going in all different directions, so that when you cut it out, you'd always have long grain going.
Oh, that's a cool idea. And then you'd have a pattern in the base as well.
That's right.
Wait. Tim got excited about that, and I didn't understand it. Can you say it again,
Yeah.
Alan?
I'll try and explain it, but basically cut it so you'd have long grain going all the way around the outside. Before cutting it, cutting a pie-shaped piece and fitting them together so you have long grain on all sides.
Got it. Okay.
Make
So
like an
basically 4
octagon or
quarters.
something.
Yeah.
4 quarters?
No, I would do 8.
8. Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, you could almost do this as octagons, although you have to make sure you still get enough overlap to attach them. That's one variant I hadn't thought of. I thought about, you know, during happy hour last night, I thought about doing a triangle and seeing what it looks like, but then
Wait, did you invite the rest of us to happy hour? Wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
Did you not invite us?
Oh, this is just my regular Sunday night happy hour.
I see. Okay.
So just to show how I did, so I showed how I did the other one, which was useful, I think. So here's how I did this guy. So I started out with, there's my first, oh, I did this again. I did this from the inside out rather than the outside in. So I've kind of built it backwards when you're thinking about the CNC point of view, because I was just thinking about how to build it in Fusion. So I did, whoops, that jumped 2. So I did my extrusion, that's my center base. Then I sketched an offset, and I did it on the top surface so that the vertical move's already in place. And then extruded that. Then I created a rotating axis because I, in this case, needed it for some reason. And then rotated the cut piece or the added piece. And then basically that same step again.
Tim, as you go from one layer to the next, go back one step before you rotate it. Okay, is there a kerf between those 2 layers if we look at it from the top? Okay, perfect.
So this is the 1/8. This is the 1/8 kerf for the end mill.
Got it.
And then this is what I call the tier width.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And each time you're extruding up from the surface of the prior layer, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's just to save the work of doing a move later. Which now in the other version I showed you, I had to do the moves.
Got it.
All right. So basically, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the 5th one.
And the radius grows just by virtue of the fact that they are linked and you're doing an offset.
Correct.
Okay.
So basically the straight side length should be exactly the same each time.
Ah, got it. Yeah.
Right?
All the way down, yeah.
It grows. So if I change the display mode, for example, to the visual style to shaded with visible edges, then you would see this line here lines up with this line, lines up with this line, etc.
Yep.
Right? Let me change the display mode, the visual style back to just straight shaded. Turn the sketches off, and let's go back to the sort of default position. Now, remember, I put all those variables in and made it parametric so we can play around with what it looks like. So let's play with some parameters.
Let's play.
So if the material is only 1/4 inch, how does it look?
Flat. Yeah.
Very few pieces of fruit.
Great surprise, yeah. Very few pieces of fruit, and it's not going to be terribly stable because a big orange out here is going to knock the whole thing over.
Yeah.
So back to parameters. Let's change this to say 1 inch. And, you know, we could make the tier width larger as well.
Tim,
And,
is it a given in your model that the straight portions of each layer are the same length?
it is a given.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, it is a given.
Okay.
Or you know, it's an outcome of the offset.
Right, right. Got it.
So this is all well and good. Let's go back to 1/2 inch tier here. I think it looks better. But one thing I wanted to play with was, you know, that 45-degree angle. It's kind of predictable looking. So what happens if I play with the angle? And let's say it's a 25-degree angle
Cyclone.
between each layer. So now
Celtic.
it's a little bit more of a spiral like.
Actually, from above, that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean you could change it. If you change it too low, there's not enough overlap to get purchase for attachment. There's no room for the dowel pins or adhesive.
Yeah.
Here's an idea, Tim. Is there a way, this is preposterous, but is there a way to take this variable and turn it into a slider so that you can visually watch it as you go from 15 to 25 to 35? Is there anything like that in the functionality of Fusion? That would be quite amazing.
That would be amazing. There might be a way to do that in animation, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not trying to derail you. I just was thinking that would be really quite the thing, because when you're looking for what works and you have to go back and forth to the parameters table, it obviously pulls away from your ability to make a judgment of one versus the other.
I think with a combination of parameters and assembly, so you would take these bodies. So each time you do this, it's created a new body. Yeah, and even if you do the cut, you start with one board and you do the cuts in this other version. Oops, this version here. It breaks them into separate bodies. So to do the animation, you'd convert the bodies to components and then do an animation.
Oh, okay, okay.
That would be kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. That's a pretty good look, though. You're 15 degrees. You're probably right that it's not, I don't know, as easily assembled, I guess is what you were saying. But that's a pretty good look from above.
Yeah, it's borderline of having enough overlap. I mean, if you've got really good glue, I guess it's going to work. But, you know, you see if we look from the bottom.
Not enough surface to surface area?
Just, I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
You know, you see, right, you know, this area here there's a little triangle there. It might be enough.
Yeah. Looks great.
So that was kind of my idea there, is make it parametric so we can play around with it. And then when we're finished, we go ahead and make it.
Yeah.
So then let me see if I can switch over. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. And I'm going to come over, share this screen here. Share. There we go. So basically what I did here was I created, I started with a 12 by 12 piece of wood, and I created the outside line first, and then I just used the offset to come in. But I used dimensions knowing where I was going to end up.
So each of those assumes that if you do an online cut, it's the kerf you would have expected in your other design?
Correct. So if I go over to the 3D view, you know, here it is. So let's go to reset preview, and let's see how fast this does it. This is a slow computer. That's the fastest. So there it does the V groove, and now it's doing the outside cuts.
Oh, you did an inside cut and then an outside cut separately?
I did the V grooves first.
Oh, that's what was happening. Okay, got
That's giving us the chamfer.
Got it. I thought you had done a 1/8 inch cut around the pieces first, and then you did the V bit, and then you did the outside.
No, I wanted to do the V grooves first, and then cut through it. Of course, you know, we have this material here. We could have started out by just doing the V grooves, as well as dowel holes.
Double click on the corner.
Put alignment holes in the corner to flip it over with.
Yeah, but double click it right now, the corner.
Right. And that's going to go away, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it would be.
Oh, no,
Not if you got tabs.
wait, do I have, I didn't think I had a tab on the very outside, but maybe I did. I didn't in one variant of it, but
Got it. Okay, cool.
I guess there must be a tab there, yeah. And the only annoying thing was, like, I did the V grooves all as, you know, one selection, just go do a profile, picking all those paths. But whatever I did with the actual end mill, it would always start from the inside and go out. And it wasn't the only way I could enforce going from the outside in.
That's why you broke it down the way you did. Okay.
Was to make a separate profile for each one.
Got it.
So can I ask you guys who have done this a few times a question about the process? I was wondering if when you're doing the V groove, the V carving first, you're basically going to be using both sides of the bit, cutting into it. I was wondering if there's any advantage or disadvantage to using the flat end mill 1/8 inch to clear out the slot first and then come in and use the V bit so that it's only cutting on one edge.
Yeah. The biggest reason there, Doug, would be the fact that you have much weaker connection between the pieces of wood when you're just relying on tabs. And so if you've already taken away the holding strength of the solid board, and by putting in all those 1/8 inch profile cuts first, then you just have a greater chance of sort of breaking the tabs if you go through afterwards with your V bit.
You could go part way though. You could only go part way down with your end mill first, and then do the V groove.
And then do a second pass with the end 1/8 inch. Yes, you could do that.
Right, you could do that. And the advantage I would see, guessing this is where you're going, Doug, is that you could probably get better finish by doing the correct direction.
That's what I was thinking, that the finish might be better with just one edge cutting as opposed to both sides removing material.
Well, normally when we're V carving, it's cutting both sides anyhow, and both sides seem to be clean. So I don't see where that would be a problem.
Yeah, if we use V-carve for a 3D entity, it certainly does that. That's true. I mean, if you're doing something like, I'm not sure if this is going to show up. Not enough contrast here, I don't think. Oh, wait, this is the one with the camera. You know, this is just a trial.
Hey, Tim, it's about a postage stamp size for us right now because we've got the screen sharing going on.
Oh, right. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to show here? I'll just show this in profile before I close this.
Well, will you put these files? I mean, you don't have to, of course, but would you put these up when you do the post so we can actually try them out? That'd be great. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, I'll include this one too. So let me stop this share.
We just need to get Vectric to start doing parameters.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Okay, now you can see me. The contrast isn't really good. This isn't the right wood. This is just my test to learn how to use the CNC.
Did inlay right there, yeah.
Yeah, this was using Howard's 321.
Show us your cross section because that was the cool part.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, see? And there you can see that the clearing end mill didn't go down as far as it was supposed to, and I don't know why. I think I screwed something up. Now that was on the Shapeoko 3. When I redid a similar thing with the XXL, I didn't get that result.
Got it.
This is poplar and oak. I was just trying this out. The finished product is going to be walnut and maple. I just didn't want to use my good wood.
And what is it again when you're done? I'm just out of curiosity. What's the project?
It's a box cover for a 25 sample whiskey
Cool.
Advent tasting box.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's great.
A bit complicated. So
I'm gonna need that design, Tim.
Yeah. Yes, Mark will need that, Tim, just so you know.
So I tried this, I did learn a few things. I tried this bear and this paw print, and it's a Northwest tribal thing. So you can see there's actually two bear heads in the pad.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just a little too detailed. There's too many thin lines in there, and those didn't follow through. So what looks like white wood is actually just glue.
Oh, good recovery.
Now, the other thing is that, poplar probably isn't as good as maple for cutting.
Yeah.
And I did this using a 60-degree V-bit, and I'm going to try using a 90-degree to keep the thin areas a little more solid and hopefully get fewer chips going on. I understand that guys who do inlays and floors say, well, you don't want to use a 90-degree V-bit in a floor because then when you refinish the floor, you go down and your dimensions change more radically.
Yeah, true.
But they're also not doing things that are 0.5 millimeter wide. So that's okay. So I think we've covered the bowl. Any other questions on the bowl or feedback? Like I said, I will share the files for the bowl, is both the VCarve and the Fusion 360 files.
So you plan on building it, Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to build it. I haven't figured out what wood I'm going to use, and I really wasn't going to go anywhere near it until you answered the question about the grain for me. Because I instinctively knew that was going to be a problem.
When you get ready to do that, I've got a few tips for you on how you make that octagonal blank.
Yeah. I'm going to play with that both in. I'm going to play with it in Fusion 360. I'm also going to look and see whether I use the octagonal pie with a rectangular shape, or whether I actually want to go to an octagonal shape and see what that looks like. But I think the octagonal shape is going to be too many corners and too noisy.
Hmm.
Although again, it might look like a Celtic knot, but
Yeah, the blank is the thing. I've got a few suggestions for you on how you actually manufacture that.
okay, yeah, I appreciate that, because that would be a whole new thing for me. I'm going to take Dan's question offline, and I'll post an answer in the forum. Okay, I want to look at the copy and move, and maybe I'll even make a little video and just put it in there to show once I figured out what the issue is and how it gets resolved. In other words, I go look on YouTube and figure out what somebody else did.
Okay.
Let's be honest.
Thank you. That's fine.
So at this point, I'm done with my part. I want to open it to the group. And then also Travis was going to talk to us about shaper origin at some point.
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. But before I do, if anybody's is curious to see the contrast, oh, he went offline with the other.
I'm trying to save bandwidth, you know.
I'm sorry, folks. I think about half of you were on when we were contrasting his image for his, what was it, phone? Is that what you had?
Oh, no, it's on another computer. It's on the Windows computer.
Okay. We had both of you up here, and there was just such a different look that I was going to pause for a little bit. Let's also dwell on that for a minute before I went into what I was going to share. Could you, you guys have already got your screen showing up, is that right?
Yeah, you should be able to share screen.
Okay. This all, what I want to share with you guys all comes out of the fact that I found this video. It simply says that there was a session. That's what they're calling this video tutorial sequence they do in real time. A session on the Fusion 360 with the use of the Shaper Origin, which is the tool that I'll point to. And I was just thinking Tim might be interested in that, and Tim threw it back at me. Well, how about you talk about that? So here we are, folks. So what I'd like to do then is to give you just a minute on, let me see if I can find the files here. Okay. So the Shaper is think about it as a hand plunge router sort of tool that also happens to have a computer built into it. And yet in order for it to be driven by the computer, it needs to receive files that would guide it. And those are SVG files. Let me go ahead now and share with you a screen here, which I'm going to show you a little video. Let me share that. Okay, so let's see it. This is the project right here. And in the beginning here, it just simply talks about how inside of Fusion 360, there is the opportunity to add plugins. And you can search for different types of applications that would be plugging straight in. What you're looking at right here is in the App Store of Autodesk, searching for the Shaper utilities, pops up this utility which works in Fusion 360 on both Mac OS and Windows. So you design your thing inside of Windows to the inside of Fusion 360, and then when you're at the point of having finished your design, and this is the thing that was designed, it was simply a three-legged stool. It has a circular seat. It has three legs that are identical at a particular angle. There's a mortise hole cut in the top, and there is a tenon at the top of each of those legs. So that is basically what he takes you through in the design exercise. And from there then, he starts taking the three pieces, and this is the first piece right, actually I want to go a little bit further here. This is basically the leg from a profile perspective. Okay, so you'd be cutting out three of these things. Then you'd be, as a second cutting operation, you would be going to the seat, where you'd have a profile operation for cutting out the outside, and then the three mortise holes. And then lastly, you'd need to take that leg that you had created, and that leg, using a fixture that they have to work with the origin, you would work on the end grain and you'd shape the tenon out of the top of that leg. Now it's important to think about those three pieces, and even though we talked about the leg first as a profile cut to get the leg, but then thirdly as something we would work on the end grain of, you just have to break the piece apart into three discrete operations, because you're going to be sending out files that would do those three things. And what you do is you use the utility that I showed you at the outset to output SVG files. And on the surface, it seems like, why would you bother to output SVG files when SVG files can be had anywhere. And I'll get to that in just a second, but when you have output those SVG files, the way the workflow happens with the shaper origin, which I'll remind you, all we've done so far is sit in front of Fusion 360, design something, break it apart into the logical pieces we would need to turn into cut sequences, and then exported them as SVGs using their utility. Once they're exported, you would use this feature right here, which is just inside of the browser, uploading your files to the Shaper hub.
What is a
Magic happens
shaper
at that point, but
origin?
I'm hearing somebody about to ask a question. What's the question?
I'm just wondering, what is a shaper origin? Why is all this stuff going on, and what
show
is
you that.
this?
I'll literally show you that in about 30 seconds, okay?
Okay.
The shaper origin takes SVG files and only does a few things with them. Let's take a circle, for instance. If I have a circle, I can do a profile cut on the inside of the circle. I could do a profile cut on the circle. I could do it outside of the circle. And I can also I can also clear areas, so I can do pockets. Those are the basic operations that a shaper origin does. And that's the magic that comes from the utility that's built into Fusion 360. So if you're outputting something and it knows it needs to be color-coded to do an inside profile cut or a pocket, those are all color-coded in different ways. And so Fusion, with this utility, knows that they're not just standard SVG files going out there. They're color-coded to do the right thing. In addition, lines that may be guidelines can also be output for use as references. So there's a lot of information in a design file that when you output it for use with a shaper origin, conveys a lot of additional information through color coding, and that's what that utility does. So that may, Doug, have taken more than 30 seconds, but let me show you a shaper origin.
That's what it is. Okay. Yeah.
So a shaper origin, it looks like a router and sort of a plunge router housing here. And this has been available. This is a version 2 of the tool. It's been around for about 2 or 3 years. The version 1 was around for a couple of years. This is the workstation, which is a build coming out of a project. The project allowed you to do a lot, but this will allow you to do a whole lot more. This is not actually shipping. I'm expecting it in October. We'll talk real briefly about that in just a second. But I'm going to go here and I'm going to jump to a few pieces in a video to show you some things. But after, and Tim, I need to sign in again with my phone. So if you could just add me in when you see it.
What kind of flip phone is that?
It's a tricorder. Just a regular iPhone. Bear with me, I'm trying to get the link. I'll tell you what, I'm going to avoid that. I'm just going to go straight to the video. We're going to mute the music. So that's the workstation, and that's the shaper origin. Now, I want to make a couple of points, and let me see if I can just switch back to my regular video here and hold up a shaper origin for you to see. This is, I can't see myself here, hold on. Okay, this is a shaper origin. Now, on the one hand, it's really just a spindle, as you'd expect, with a 1/4 inch collet, and the controls that are on this thing are really just speed and on off. So this part is not very remarkable. And it simply slips into this. And if I were to hold this thing as I would when I'm using it, there are 2 handles on it. and I would move it around on the surface of a piece of wood. What makes it remarkable is what's behind the router. And on here, this is the side that's facing away from me. There are LEDs here and a camera. And those work in conjunction to bring the reality of the wood that's in front of me and connect it to the design, which is on the display that you see at the top here. I haven't turned it on, but there's a display up there. And it's using augmented reality, and I'll show you that in the video. But the logic is that if you put this tape, you see that there are dominoes on there? This tape has dominoes on it, and if you put it strip after strip after strip, then the first thing you do with your shaper origin is you scan that surface, just visually, and it learns everything about the positioning on your wood, at which point then your shaper knows about your wood. Now, from the website that we showed a minute ago is where I uploaded those SVG files to. Those are downloaded to my shaper origin. So now the design files are on my shaper origin. And so in my shaper origin is a bunch of design. It's unconnected to the wood yet. The wood, because of the dominoes, is connected to the shaper origin. I need to bring the two together. So there's a process of establishing registration with the wood, and then bam, your design is tied to the wood. And at that point then, you can start doing your cuts. Now, the cuts, if they were just with your hand, would be not particularly accurate, and this wouldn't be a relatively interesting tool. However, what the shaper origin does is while you're controlling it with your hand, it's adjusting dynamically to any error in your movement so that you get really, really precise cuts. So you usually go through and do a roughing pass, and then you'll go through and shave off maybe the last 5/1000ths, and it's really, really tight. So this video that I'm about to show you is something which I'll pause and jump forward in periodically, but it's to just show you this thing in action.
So it has in that little
so this is
holder.
this next part is the location tracking. Notice how you're scanning. The blue tape has been picked up on by the camera that is facing away from the user. And you can see in the display, it's seeing the dominoes. You do that over your entire surface to tie the surface to your shaper origin. There is now looking in to where your design is on the display. That circle, you can see with the green line, is been programmed to do an inside profile cut. Now, when I hit play again, I want you to notice that the dashed line is moving. It's moving a particular way. That is the motion that you need to move the router in order to be doing the right motion relative to the spindle turning. And so you're guided all along. Now, you're guided visually on that display, but you're still a human being prone to make errors and be imprecise. So what I'm about to show you next is the head automatically moving. Now, this little example they're going to give you is really just it doing a helix cut. It's got a 1/4 inch end mill and it's making a 3/8 inch hole. So it can actually move enough all by itself to do that. But this is what happens when the router is adjusting dynamically. It has the ability to maintain precise positioning. Now, when you combine the human being moving this router along the surface of wood, trying to stay within the confines of a design, but we're only human, we'll make small errors, it will dynamically compensate for that. So here you can see how the precision from moving freehand, he's going straight back, but the head is actually going to and fro. And it produces great results. So that is the portion that I wanted to have Tim see when I said, look, from our Fusion 360, we're able to output files that can be used in a shape or origin, which is essentially another form of digital tool. But I'm going to jump ahead here, just give you some examples of what can be done. So this is just beautiful. I mean, everybody just ooh and ah on that. That's 3 pieces of wood so precisely cut and fit that you end up with just a stunning contrast in this dovetail joint. It's just unbelievable. Precision is more than just lip service when it comes to this product. It really, really is precise.
If I
Yeah,
remember
very
from
tight.
what I read, they said a tenth
I think
of
so.
an inch. It's a hundredth of an inch.
Yeah, that's what we got here. She was actually doing some project to bring all sorts of kinds of woods together on this one large cross section of a tree. But they all fit so beautifully. So we've got coming up here. So and he's just using this for the purposes of mortise and tenons. There you can see him doing it cut out. Let me jump ahead a little bit here. Okay, he's taking that out. Watch what he puts in there. Isn't that a perfectly fitting brass oval? It's just amazing. We'll take it a little further here. Oh, this is actually some just beautiful detail work. Oh, these are kind of fun. He has these inlays that hopefully we'll see in just a second. There's the tape laid out across the surface of the wood so that she can do all of these holes for the thick legs. It can also do, not V-carve, but single line font carving. A lot of this has to be done. I'll show you that piece right there. That's a project that I did too. It comes in this, well, what do you call the family of tools there, Dallas? The ones that, those boxes?
Sustainers?
One's from Festool. What are they called?
Sustainers.
I don't recall. But now here you're going into an existing installation and he's making an inlay in the floor. And because of the tape, because of tying the shaper tool to the floor and the design to the shaper tool, he's able to, in a very scary fashion, I would be scared to death doing this to someone's floor, but ends up with these really beautifully tight-fitting inlays. And of course, once it's been finished, it really contrasts nicely.
Hey, Travis, are you unable to hear people asking you questions?
Those little starbursts.
I guess
Sounds
so.
like it.
Now, a lot of this can be done in any design package and then sent over to the tool, but unbelievably built right into the display of the shaper origin. You can do things like, I want to do a circle of such and such a size, this depth, this tool, and do it. You can do box joints very easily. You can do single line font engraving, all on the tool itself, not even needing to use any design software. This is kind of cool. He did a design where he was going to put an entire series of notes onto the floor, and you can see the tape was there in order for him to, again, tie the design to the floor. But there it is, a bunch of beautiful inlay. There's some more inlay. Really great for putting wood into things that already exist. Jump ahead here. Oh, when you can put in hardware that precisely, where everything just fits so snugly, it's really great. A lot of these design files are just available for download. Watch this thing go in. Look at that. Just gorgeous. Here, he's actually doing everything. He needs to do this. Let me go back just a second here. He wanted to do that hole, the 2 circular ends with a connecting rectangle. He designed it on the tool itself, and he's cutting it out, and it's in the result where he'll drop in the piece of hardware. But it was all designed on the tool. You saw the keypad, the touch screen. So there he is, just doing his profile cuts. And there you go. He's dropping that right in. Let's see here. Something at the very end I want to show you that has to do with the precision of the cut. But here, the person is designing a single line font cut using the V-bit. And we'll see the results here in just a second. It was so small that he didn't have to move the shaper. It was just all within its range of XY movement. So there you have it. Let me get to the very end here where there's a piece I wanted to show you. Here, this one here. Maybe I should show you that too. Okay. This is, you can see the end mill actually moving. You do progressive cuts each time, taking it down a certain distance. It does have like a 1.75 inch total Z travel. And again, this is enough within its XY range of travel that it can do that. But look at the dimensions you're seeing there, okay? Perfect fit. Tiny bit too small. Look at that. You did that on a handheld tool, okay? It's just jaw-dropping how precise it is. And what I like in particular, I guess there are a few things I like about it. One is it's so small and yet it's so big. Doug and I used to do things with large sheets of plywood, making what we called cupcake cars. And we didn't have access to a 4x8 CNC bed. So we didn't have a way of actually doing these things very comfortably. And the notion for the shaper was to be able to do cuts on very large materials. Since in my shop here, in my garage, I have very little room. Another thing that I really like is the end joinery that you can do with it. With the workstation, you saw what the workstation that you can buy looks like. It was based on this project right here. Basically, you clamp wood in at one end. It's flush with the top here. You can see the array of dominoes here. You just mount it on the side of your bench, and you use your shaper origin on top. Never have to worry about the dominoes or anything. You do end joinery beautifully on this thing. And the workstation that's coming out takes it to the next level, because everything I'm lacking in terms of angular precision or metal clamping platforms, there's no platform in this design, so I can't actually work on flat stock. I have to work on end mill stock. That is another feature I really like, is being able to do end joinery on this thing. To be able, you can do box joint designs right on the display of the shaper, and it's just so cool to just within the tool itself say, you know, how many fingers you want and how deep you want the fingers to be, and how the sides will go together, and boom, you just crank it out. I think what I like most about it is I like innovation, and this is basically a completely new category of tool. It was acquired by the same holding company that owns Festool and SawStop. And so you can see some innovation and quality in that family of brands. And it's only been around for, I don't know, maybe 6 years. I saw it as a graduate student project at Maker Faire in San Francisco. I just sort of followed it in the background. When the first version came out, they were still sort of a startup. I wasn't too sure. But then eventually they were acquired and they came out with version 2.0. And it's reinvention. It's a really creative reinvention. And that you're learning Fusion 360, and it can output files directly to be able to use with this thing via the cloud. I don't know. We don't see that kind of thing readily available elsewhere. And I don't know, it makes me happy. I'm a digital tools guy. This is a fun new kind of digital tool. Any questions about that?
Can you hear us?
I can't hear you, Doug.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I muted. I turned my thing down because of the music. I didn't hear you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just checking to see if you could hear us, because we had tried to ask a few questions earlier.
Do you remember in the video it was playing music? I
Yeah,
turned
you can
down
cut
my
out
amp. Yeah, I turned down my speakers because of that music. I'm sorry, guys. What questions did you have? Sorry.
So
They were really
basically,
important questions, weren't they?
So basically your arms are providing a coarse XY, and the device itself is providing a fine XY plus the vertical.
Yes. And that is actually one of the few things I don't like about it. When you're working on a large sheet of ply, you're reaching out great distances and trying to maintain some precision in your hand guiding of the tool. Now, not everybody's going to work on a 4x8 sheet of ply, right? But when it gets that big, you can find it kind of awkward. Also, the dominoes that you lay down, they work great, but as soon as you cut through them, they're no longer useful. So you're always thinking about how to cut your piece so that you're keeping as many dominoes legit as possible. Once you cut through them, you have to put new tape down, which is fine. It will extend from the tape that's left, which it recognizes, to new tape you put down. So you can constantly build up, but you really don't want to have to do that. And lastly, when it comes to the tape, in order for it to maintain its precision, it really needs to see enough tape, not all tape, but as soon as you get down to just a few rectangles, its precision, its ability to calibrate the design to the workpiece goes down. There's a little sort of display on the top. It gets to red or slightly red or green, and you're always sort of cutting, trying to face inward so you can see more dominoes as possible so that you can maintain that precision. And that's just a way of thinking. It's not particularly difficult. It's just sometimes a little bit awkward. You kind of have to position your workspace so that you can always get around it and face the camera of the shape of origin towards more dominoes. But not a big deal, just a fact of life when using this tool. Other questions?
Sounds like it needs to be hung on a Maslow.
There you go. Can you imagine a Maslow with this? That'd be so cool.
It'd give it the precision that they need.
So that it's so lacking. Then you wouldn't need a brick because it's kind of heavy.
Yeah.
A Maslow, just so you guys who don't know, if you imagine a flatbed CNC up at a 75-degree angle where the router is just on the weight of gravity up against the wood, weighted down with some bricks, and the CNC is being moved with two chains that go to either corner. Doug, how much was your kit? Like $400?
Yeah, I think it was like $450, and then you buy the $150 router.
Yeah, and then there was and it's for a full sheet of a full ply. You can do it 4x8, right?
Yeah. That's what got me thinking about you saying how you have to preserve your dominoes.
Yeah.
So you'd have to start at one corner or somewhere, and then slowly work out, and then be reaching over your big sheet.
Yeah.
As you eventually get to the other side.
It's kind of awkward.
But it's pretty cool. I mean, that's it's crazy when you don't see the design on the wood, but you see it in the display, and then it's there when you're done.
And it's so precise. I mean, you have to do it the right way to get that precision. You basically go down to your last, say, 5/1000ths, and then you just remove an onion skin, and it's just so precise. I'm always floored when I realize what you can pull off in precision with this thing.
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect that from a. Pardon?
It looks like it has like a good inch or more of travel. The movement.
Well, it's actually more like a 1/4 of an inch on each side. So if you start going beyond that, it immediately retracts. It knows it's outside of the bounds. And so you will end up with nicks if you end up, so you're reaching over awkwardly on your 4x8 sheet, and you slip a little bit, it'll recoil, and it'll probably nick the side a little bit if you push too hard. But it knows when it's outside the bounds of what it can cut, and it retracts. Other questions?
Can it cut meat?
Hey, wait, not everybody saw it previously. Can you show it?
Yeah. You'll have to give me the screen.
I don't think, no, I think it should be there. Tim made it available to everybody.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, just take it.
This is the equivalent of a place setting.
What you're seeing is a steak that has been lasered with the person's name and how they wanted it. I was bored on Sunday.
Yeah, so you have 5 or 6 people over, just
Yeah, they had their names on the steaks.
pick your steak, laser it, and
Yeah.
If that's medium rare, I don't want to see your rare.
Anyhow, that
Good
was
stuff.
it.
Chicago Blue, is it?
Let's see. Stop. There we go.
Any other questions? This is really just to connect the Fusion 360 concept to applications. There are quite a few, actually. I believe that's how, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how we get stuff out into VCarve, right? Isn't there a Carbide 3D plugin?
Well, yes, post processors.
Yeah, it's actually it's a post processor in this case, and it's for Shapeoko, but it's a Carbide 3D, and it's being used in Carbide Motion, not VCarve. But the whole notion of being output to different things is really the point here. I just happen to have the example of outputting through a very specific tool, and the example of how it does something special for that tool, which is the color coding, to let it know whether or not it's a guideline, if it's a pocket, a profile, and whether that profile is inside, outside, or on the line. I mean, it's a vast majority of what we're doing. The Shaper Origin is not going to do 3D carving. It's strictly 2.5D, but that's an awful lot of what we do. So I can't imagine trying to control its movement in such a way that it could do the 3D carving correctly. That would be just nuts. Maybe someday. I'm done with this demo unless someone has a question. Tim, I think you wanted to throw it out to anybody now, right? So let's see, who hasn't spoken? Paul hasn't spoken. Paul, say something sagely.
Well, with that handheld router, CNC router, just get a pair of knee pads and lay your workpiece down.
Yeah, well,
and then do it on the ground like the video had it do it. I was just kind of wondering how much tape you burn through and then setting up the proper sequencing, because you don't want to route areas where you're going to have to then guide the foot of the router for stability and for CNCing out additional. It just takes them some thought.
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about, though, as you say, is just sort of knowing how the tool
Planning,
works,
yeah,
and planning. But what I didn't mention was these little rolls of tape. I don't know, it's 100 feet, $18. There's a great replenishment business. You can probably go through, I think 1.5. They're placed 4 inches apart, and if you're going to be doing a 4x8 sheet of ply, use about 2/3 of one of these rolls. So this is a consumable, but when you're using it on a workstation, those dominoes are never changed. And our speaker for the next general meeting was telling me about this one fixture that he's found where you can just reuse tape over and over again, because much like the workstation here works, you can use this fixture for a lot of size woods of various thicknesses. One of the difficulties with this tool, I suppose I should share, is the array of dominoes must be coplanar, meaning the top of the surface of the dominoes must be the same as the top of the surface of the piece you're working on. So if you're putting dominoes on what you're cutting, that's not a problem. But if you're trying to use a sheet that has dominoes on it with other pieces that are smaller, and you want to use the dominoes over and over again, the difference in heights just becomes a pain in the patootie. And it's going to be improved upon with certain types of things like this workstation, but it is a bit of a hassle if you're trying to work on something small right now. The workstation will change that in a big way when it comes out. It's supposed to ship next month in October.
Sounds like they need some sort of projector.
Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah.
Another tool in the toolbox, so it does fit applications, especially for cupcake cars. So
yeah. Oh, by the way, I mentioned my having done cupcake cars with Doug. I also did a cupcake car with Paul. Paul and I went to the other end of the range we wanted to do what was normally produced with a large digital tool, a 4x8 bed, 4x8 foot CNC bed. We wanted to do it with something that could be universally done around the world. And so he and I came up with a plan whereby we used 3 by however many feet, 3 feet wide by however many feet long templates of paper that you then unroll and put down on your ply. Paul, I think we headed down to jigsaw and trim router, right? Isn't that, aren't those the tools we ended
I
up
believe
using?
so. I'm finding the Instructables workshop. I'll just put that in the chat and people can look at it.
Okay, that's a good one. So between what Doug and I did originally, and then what Paul and I did to be able to take this to third world countries where you only had a certain number of hand tools, we would have sent these designs to anybody in the world who asked for them. Oddly, all these years later, nobody's ever asked for it, but that was our ambition. And the thought was, how do we get a digital tool type result with hand tools? And obviously you won't get it, but with these templates that were taped down and just a couple of hand tools, you could crank these things out. Yeah, he stuck the link to the Instructable inside of our chat.
I was gonna say, Travis, if you can find, there was a video of me moving the tricycle cupcake car assembly. I wonder if that would show the precision of how the parts went together.
That was the tricycle cupcake car, though.
Right.
Right. That was a different one.
Oh, wasn't that what you guys worked on? That was what you were doing.
Oh, I don't know. Paul, did we do the tricycle or did we do the full size?
Yeah, I did the tricycle.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm not remembering correctly.
The size one was done up in North County.
Okay, you guys are learning way too much about Doug, Paul, and me right now, okay?
So it was pretty cool. That was one of my first times I got a chance to see what large CNC would do, because this guy up in this mechanical engineer up in Northern California designed this, iterated through and made this small cupcake car that children could get into. And it literally is a cupcake. It's, you know, it's shaped like a cupcake and stuff. And there's a tricycle inside. But he provided us with the files. We figured out what they were, PDF files essentially. And then Travis had a guy who had a 4x12 sheet. Yeah. Or sorry, 4x8 sheet. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was a 4 foot by 4 foot.
Oh, that's
CNC.
right. It was like, yeah. It was slightly less than that. We had to do just all the files to be able to cut it.
This is just about 4, was it 4 feet across or maybe 3? I forget.
There's a little tricycle in there.
Yeah, there's a tricycle in there. So it was so cool because there are struts and parts here that just, well, you know, when you CNC something, I mean, these things just fit perfectly. And it really made a difference on how it all went together, this whole structure.
There are all the Corel Draw files for all the pieces, all the cut files, assuming certain end mills and such. There are the designs, what it looks like.
So yeah, look at all the pockets and stuff in the floor.
Just 8 more images. Let's see what's there. There we are cutting it.
Okay.
Oh, this is the one you and I did, Paul. This is the paper template.
Yeah.
That looks familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. This is now going down memory lane.
Yeah, we don't need to bore everybody with.
Yeah,
so you
let's
could
spare them, Doug. Let's
and
spare
you could
them,
do
Paul.
that now with the Shaper Origin.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, it would be so much more precise.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Tim in particular on our topic of Fusion 360?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm going to attempt to flatten out that first one you showed us, bring it back into basically 2D, and export an STL and then generate some files for that. But now I realize that I have to update my Fusion and see what trouble that brings me,
Hey,
because he's at a different version.
Tim, I want to paraphrase what you had said to me earlier. And by the way, you're muted. Tim liked the idea of my taking up some of the burden of this call tonight, because, you know, he ends up teaching every single time. And he didn't say all of this, but I just feel like we should be adding to this process as well. So I was very happy when he asked me to share this with you about the Shaper origin. It was 360 related. It would take some of the burden off him. He didn't have to do as much preparation. But all of you guys have got something going on. I mean, we got a steak out of Howard. I mean, how much more exotic does it get than that, you know? So I guess what I'm wanting to suggest is, like we do in other special interest groups, we end up with a time. It could be sometimes in the laser SIG, it's like the entire time is just sharing and talking. Sometimes it's just a little bit of what people have to share at the end after one or two topics are dealt with. But it would be, I think, helpful to Tim, and I know it is to other SIG leaders, when the rest of the team helps to carry the burden a little bit. I'm sure Howard's doing stuff all the time on his. I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff he could show us. And so I just wanted to plant that seed out there.
As a side note, I don't know if everybody saw the posting from Pat that casters had been put on the smaller Shapeoko, so now that can be moved out of the way, and the table is at the same height as the XXL. So now it is, the XXL is a good candidate for any tiling, CNC jobs that need to be done. I just wanted to do that shout out for Pat.
Oh, thanks.
The other thing is we've got the new upgrades for the for both of the machines sitting in the shop ready to go. We'll have those on before too long.
So the upgrades that Dallas is referring to are the new heads on the two Shapeokos. Currently, we have a belt-driven Z-axis, and with the new heads that the shop just purchased, we have Acme screws along linear rails, and it's just going to be rigid as all get out. One of the things that can happen, and in speculation, I think it may have been you, Tim, who came up with the idea that occasionally you might well go beyond the bounds of the natural range of travel and not be able to have that caught with end stops. And so it would throw it off mid-cut, and you'd end up with a different cut depth at a different time. That absolutely won't happen with these new heads. They're very rigid. And I think, Dallas, you also purchased some new dust collector heads, boots for those things, so that they work really well with the new heads, correct?
They'll be here tomorrow, yes.
Cool, cool. So major upgrade, and I'm personally excited just because the Shaper and the Shapeokos are relatively middle of the road CNC when you just buy them. But with some of the things that we have been able to add, like the bit setter, like the Z Plus head, and I can't remember what the third thing was, they're just becoming better and better, which is just allowing us to offer our members that much more capable a suite of CNC tools to work with. As I was teasing Dallas earlier today, if only he could expand our facility, we could maybe get into some serious CNC. But everybody fights over every square foot in his space there, and I don't think there's any magic around the corner. Who needs a bench room, Dallas?
Yeah. Let's go talk to John Rigger about that.
Oh yeah, the whole turning topic. Which, oh, by the way, tell us about that, Dallas. The new spin routers. I mean, lathes.
Yeah. And I know that Mark would be interested in this. We're getting ready to buy some new lathes, and Gary got the idea of approaching Jet and Nova and see if either one of them might compass some. And he was able to convince Jet to give us 2 new lathes, which are going to be here Thursday.
Nice. Well done.
I'll say.
Well, actually, I thought it was 4, so my heart is sunk.
Not right?
I thought it was 4 lathes, so I guess I was really overly ambitious there.
So there's 2 more on. I didn't want to promise those because those aren't committed to yet, but we're hopeful of getting 2 more.
Oh, that'd be great. Wow. Okay. Took a stab in the dark and I hit. Thank you, Dallas.
I've got
So-
shipping documents for 2 of them, and they show they're going to show Thursday.
That's great. That'd be so nice.
So are these to make pens? Or
Yes.
what, how big are these lathes?
They're small. They're not.
They're 10-inch diameter, 18-inch long on the spindle length. They're typical,
Okay.
regular lathes. We have 2 bigger ones by far. I was going to show you guys. Hold on.
Well, it's definitely pretty cool because you can do classes and stuff that's a little bit more approachable when you're
That's
that
what we
big.
need them for us for the classes. We've got the big ones for the big stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Never mind. Yeah, I just happened to have turned a really interesting pen, I guess yesterday. Gary gave me some really bizarre looking, I think it's root. I don't know. Can you guys recognize what this is?
Groot?
It's like a root system.
Uh,
And I went ahead and did cactus juice on them. And then it was a really weird shape. So I managed to get, enough to be able to turn some pens out of this. But, you put the cactus juice in and all of a sudden it's hard as rock. And when you turn it, it just makes for a really bizarre looking exterior. Again, look at that pattern.
those cactus juice like an epoxy or something?
It's like an epoxy that's very, very low viscous. So you put it into a vacuum chamber, and Dallas guided me on this whole process.
Just sucks it into all the pores.
It sucks it in, sucks all the air out, and all the air is replaced with resin. And then you bake it to like 190 degrees for like 4 hours. And you get what was once a flimsy, soft material. You get a brick out of it. And I was just really curious whether or not it was going to, fall to pieces when I was turning it. And thankfully it didn't. But I have 2 more pieces for just testing technique, and then I'm going to actually make the real pens. It's such bizarre looking stuff, and I was really curious. I also put cactus juice into this. Gary gave me this. It's just a cross section of a little branch or something, but it had such interesting grain pattern, a very thick, soft outer bark, very dark core interior. So you can still see that there's epoxy on it. That was from after it was baked. But I'm going to be making these things into wedges, and I'm going to turn them into trivets. Again, they're hard as a rock at this point, but that's, again, thanks to Dallas for having guided me through the entire build process for my compressor, and then talking to me about cactus juice. And I've got a vacuum chamber that I put these things in, and I don't know, just keep learning. Anyhow, I'm blathering on. Sorry. Tim, what's up?
Check to see how deep that goes in.
Pardon?
Have you, when you cut into something, that looked like it might have been about 4 inches thick. How deep is that cactus juice in there?
Yeah, I don't know. I suspect, given all the air that came to the surface, this thing was pretty well penetrated. I haven't done anything yet, Dallas, because my bandsaw has a maximum height of like 4 or 5 inches, and I need to build a fixture, a jig to go on the bottom of this thing so I can use it on the bandsaws at the shop. I just haven't gotten to that point yet, so I don't know what the innards are like. This is actually the shape that I was given, and so I have to shave it down and get those pieces. But I just asked Gary, what kind of bizarre wood do you have lying around, And he gave me those 2 pieces, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the results will be. Sort of in process at this point.
Live edge, yeah.
Pardon?
Interesting live edge.
Yeah, it really, before I put cactus juice in this thing, the outside was almost like cork-like soft. You could push on it, it was mushy. Now it's very hard because of the cactus juice, but yeah, it's very hard. And I have no idea. I mean, maybe Dallas, when you see this up close sometime, you might be able to guess what this wood is. But it's such a bizarre looking structure.
Wow.
So I cut down an Australian tree fern not long ago, and it looked really cool while it was green. But then when it dried out, it went weird. I didn't know about cactus juice, so I would have tried it because it had quite the odd structure internally. It would have made some really cool turnings. Unfortunately, it looked ugly, and then I threw it out.
Right. Well, let me make an offer to anybody here because, you know, going through and building a vacuum pump system and then making the investment in a vacuum chamber and cactus juice is kind of a lot to do if you're just going to mess with it. And I have all the stuff. If somebody wants to try having some material of theirs put in a vacuum chamber with cactus juice, I'd be more than happy to do that. So, you know, next time, Tim, you come across some bizarro looking wood, let me know. I'd be more than happy to turn it into a brick for you.
Okay, cool. The other thing I got recently was a neighbor cut down some tangerine trees, and I got some big stumps. Now, I just needed a little bit because I usually just turn it into sawdust and use it for smoking salmon.
Let me show you the one constraint you have to deal with.
I was wondering if anyone's worked with citrus wood.
I have.
Is it any good?
Yeah, it's kind of, it does have kind of a yellow orange cast to it.
Mhm.
And it actually is pretty interesting. I've done both orange and lemon.
Okay. Now this is tangerine, so it should be similar to the orange.
I've got some
Nice.
drying in the garage right now that's been there 2 years.
So Tim, it's only a gallon size, and this is the
Yeah.
general size. So anything that I could do is only within that volume.
Okay.
That homemade or did you buy that?
I just happened to purchase this one, but it's not that difficult. I suppose I bought it in part because this acrylic lid is like 3/4 of an inch thick, and you know when you start putting it down to, hey Dallas, how many inches of mercury do we get it down to? It's like really.
We're taking it down to 26.
Yeah. I kept reading about people having done something and their lids would crack, and I didn't want anything like that. So I just purchased one of this. This is a pretty well-known brand. And again, I just show you that for the overall scale of what can be fit in there.
Don't a lot of them use just regular paint pots for that?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I read about were people using regular paint pots and at those kinds of pressures, you know, them sort of caving in on themselves.
Well, they would cave in?
Yeah. So that's why I just figured why second guess it. I think it was only, I don't know, $69 or something like that for the gauge and the connectors and cabling and pipes. And I mean, the whole thing was for that price. So I wasn't going to be able to probably
Not that
do
much
that
different
by
than,
much.
you get a paint pot, you're not going to get it from that even for Harbor Freight.
Okay, yeah.
Would pressure cookers work?
So pressure cookers would. let's see.
Seal well enough.
The seal might be a challenge.
You want to be able, yeah, it would probably collapse. When I was in the Navy, we used to make the connectors for the submarines, and you had to get all the air out of the stuff that we molded them with. And we would buy these old bell jars. We had the compressor or the pump right in the workbench, and there was rubber on top of that. Put your work in there, put the bell jar over top. You could see everything. And those bell jars, I mean, we'd take that as high as we could take it, and those things don't break.
How do you release the pressure then under controlled conditions?
Oh, you just open the valve and let the air go back in.
I didn't know that where are the valves on the bell jar?
Oh, we had the valve right on the workbench as well.
Ah, okay. So the bench was where you'd let the air out.
Yeah, the bell jar was solid,
That's what I thought. Okay, got it. Yeah.
except for the bottom that sat on the rubber.
Right. Okay, cool. All right, so these little digressions that we've done, these are the kinds of things that help Tim not have to spill the entire hour.
Well, it's fun. It's a group thing. It should be a group thing. And, I enjoy teaching, but I don't want to do all the talking.
Right, exactly.
I feel like a big mouth if I do all the talking.
No, we all appreciate it very much.
For sure.
Good stuff. Well, I think anybody got anything else, or are we ready to wrap it up?
Ready to wrap.
I got one little thing.
Oh,
I picked up one of those composite nailers, and it's got some pluses and some minuses. It's for when you're, mounting your job on the CNC bed, and it works well as long as you got a job, the wood's bigger than what you're gonna, cut, because you don't want to put that in any of the finished product, because you can't stain it or anything. But it does remarkably hold it down well, and you know, it releases very easy, just like a little side tap on your job with a hammer, and all those composite nails just snap off. But
Are you the
Yeah.
one who sort of consulted with Mark on what to get?
I don't think that I told him what I got.
He recently got it too. Dallas, these things are so awesome. You don't have to worry about end mills being damaged by screws or anything like that. I mean, if it happens to hit, you know, who cares? It's just
I
composite.
know, yeah, it cuts it like it's a piece of wood.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, it goes in with a gun, right? Is it pneumatic or is it electric?
No, pneumatic.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit of a hassle to get that, I suppose, across from. Where do we keep the compressor now, Dallas? Is it still where it was?
Were we talking about a compressor? Or we talking about the vacuum pump?
We're talking about the compressor because this is driving the nails into.
Oh yeah, we've got one on wheels that's over there. It's beside the sanding table.
Yeah, okay. I knew it was there. I just didn't know if it was still there. Anyhow, it's a really cool tool because it holds well. It's easy to release, and lastly, you don't have to worry about running an end mill into it. Which, you know, if you get close or whatever, you just hate to ruin an end mill by hitting a nail. Not that we use, excuse me, a screw. We don't use screws all that often, but I've heard everybody who's used that really liked it. How much are the consumables, Howard?
They're about like maybe $25 for a box of the nails. There's probably 1,000 in there.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's good. Okay.
So how does this thing work? What does it do?
It's a nail gun, except that instead of shooting metal nails, it's shooting a composite material like a plastic.
Think acrylic or something.
And
So
so
it's faster.
if you're, you know, you got a job that's like 3 feet by 2 feet, you know, you can secure that in a matter of about, and it's done. You know, you've got it there, and as long as you're, you know, putting tabs on, so it'll hold any stuff in the middle. But like I had some jobs where there was pieces that were going to come out, and as I did my first cuts, then I could see where those pieces were, and I went back in with the nail gun and hit those so that when I made the final cut, you know, they'd be held. So it works pretty well.
So how long are these fasteners?
You can get them from like a 1/2 inch up to 1 3/4 inches.
You have to have a supply of different lengths based upon your stock.
Well, 1 1/4 will do the 3/4 inch wood, and so I got a 3/4 inch and 1 1/4. Because when you put it in, it doesn't go all the way in. It'll stick up about 1/4 inch.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
When you fracture it to remove your workpiece, does it leave any nub that's going to affect future jobs not
Yes.
being level on the spoil board?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Not many, but you got to look, and there might be 1 or 2 that you got to go in and either give it a little tap of a hammer or pull it out.
Okay.
Pretty minor issue, but yeah, it is an issue.
So Dallas, if you hear a request from Pat at some point, don't be surprised.
You know, have you played with these, Travis?
No, I've been reading about them for a long time, and the second person in our community who recently bought them and uses them and likes them quite a lot is our buddy Mark, who dropped off. But he much like Howard says it's really great. I just like how forgiving it is. That's what I particularly like.
Well, I'm liking the idea of not using all that CA and tape.
Yeah. It would be nice. Hey, Howard, can you send Dallas a link to what it is you've been talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I'll have to go look for it, but yeah, I'll make a note.
Anything else, Tim?
I did some research on it too, so I'll send it over to you, Dallas.
Oh, good. Good.
Well, no, I like the extra topics. It's helpful. I schedule-wise don't make it to a lot of the other SIGs. I try and get some of them on video after the fact, but
I didn't make a recommendation to you of one that was recently done and really good. Paul Duffield does the hand tools, and his last one was on hand planes. Mm-hmm. And he showed us such a variety, and he told us so much about the care of them, and he showed us technique. And better than anything, he was just so was so enamored with what these tools can do and how much he enjoyed using them. You could just hear in his voice. It's a really fun thing to be a part of something like that. He's really a big fan of hand tools, and the last one was particularly good. He must have had, I don't know, Dallas, 15 different hand planes on the table surface.
Probably all of that. It wasn't the last one though. The last one was the one with Ron.
Oh, the guest speaker. That was Ron Prater. Yeah. The one before that.
Yeah, it was like 3 weeks ago.
If you want to see an interesting expression of your professional predisposition in the form of woodworking projects, then go watch Ron's video. It's the current one that is in the videos on the left-hand side of the homepage. Ron was a nuclear physicist, and a lot of his projects looked like they came out of a physicist's mind. You know, things that were twisted and things that were melting and things that were, twisted, sheared. That was the other one that was, I said trapezoids. No, it's multiple dimensional trapezoids. That was pretty good, yeah. But there was the one before when Paul talked about hand planes, and that was really good.
Cool. Okie doke. Well, let's wrap it up, guys. I think it was a good one. It was a lot of fun. And now 2 weeks from now, we kind of got off our first and third because of the Labor Day weekend. But
why don't you just tell me the date you want, and we'll put it in the system.
Yeah, we'll come up with. I'll figure that out. We'll get back together. We'll put it in the system, guys. Keep an eye out for it.
Sounds great.
Meanwhile, if people have questions, suggestions, or challenges, we are going to do a seahorse one of these days. It might not be the exact seahorse you have in mind,
Right.
but we are going to do a seahorse.
Right. Just so you guys know, one of my walks, I go by this beautiful seahorse, and on a lark, I just sent it to Tim. I never thought he was going to embrace it as a challenge, but he did.
I brought it into Canvas and played with it a bit.
Did you? Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think you have to do forms and sculpting, and it's not actually my forte, but I did find a repository of a lot of seahorses online, STL files. So I was looking at ones that I could take and maybe slice in half and make into something. They're slightly different.
Well, if you let that drop off the queue, nobody would mind. I wasn't trying to make work. I was just something that intrigued me. That's all.
Yeah. We'll do something with the seahorse.
Okay, that sounds good.
Great. Okay. Good night, guys.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, great.
Yeah, right. Have a good evening, guys.
All right. Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.